Hello everyone, my name is Tran and I'm a junior here at Virginia Tech studying biology and engineering science and mechanics. And this semester I conducted research in a mechanical engineering lab with Dr. Leonessa, on which this portfolio is based. So let's take a look. Millions of Americans every year suffer from vocal fold paralysis, which means that you have your vocal folds like this, and either one or both of them are paralyzed, so your airways are open, which can lead to complications such as difficulty breathing, swallowing, and coughing. And the current surgical procedures, are very invasive. They include medialization, laryngoplasty, and Botox injections. With the medialization laryngoplasty procedure, you have an implant that is put into the vocal folds right here to hold it taut and meet it in the center of the other unparalyzed vocal fold to allow, when air comes in, the vocal folds vibrate together, and which produces sound. It is a relatively permanent solution, but as you can see, it's very invasive. And with the Botox procedure, a low dose of botulinum toxin is injected into your vocal folds to hold it taut, and so it's met in the center of your laryngeal cavity. This project is a 3 to 5 year plan. We are here in this green section with magnetic coils design and testing. And at this phase of the project, we are using what is called biometal fiber. It's a stimulant muscle to mimic behavior of actual muscle. We are using electromagnetic induction, because with electromagnetic induction, you can stimulate the vocal folds from an external device instead of using the electrodes with electronic stimulation. This is a simple circuit diagram of the stimulation, and I actually have a personal affiliation with this research. I tore both my ACLs playing soccer, and this day, 6 years ago, I got surgery on my first one. And where's the other? I had another picture of the ACL tear injury, but I've been through therapy where, so after therapy we would have electronic stimulation, and they'd put the electrodes on my knees, and the therapist would crank it up until it was just below my pain threshold. So it was very uncomfortable. So I appreciate what we're doing in this lab, and I would like to see a viable alternative solution to muscle stimulation. This tab shows my weekly progress. This is where I live. This is our lab. This is a spring, the force sensor, the magnetic encoder, rail, mass, and the BMF biometal fiber. And this is just a documentation, an account of every week. It allowed me to look back on this and reflect how far I've come throughout this semester. So the results of my data for the proportional integral tracking controller basically allows us to modulate the stimulation. What's important is that if you can see the dotted red line, that's the desired trajectory. That's the contraction that we want. We sent in different wave functions. This is the one to the top left is the ramp function. This is a step function. And we have a square wave and a sine wave. And as you can see from all these plots, the contraction distance followed very closely to these trajectories. And this is important because in a closed loop system, you're able to control the stimulation instead of in open loop electronic stimulation, you're sending in the signals, and the muscle fatigues very quickly. So if we're able to control this, the muscle won't fatigue as quickly. So with the magnetic encoder that you saw before, it was producing a lot of interference. So right now we have to incorporate an optical encoder. The problem with the optical encoder is that it's very sensitive. The reading strip has to be flush with the encoder, and no light can get in there. So my partner and I had to redesign our setup. And what was funny is that neither of us had any experience with SolidWorks or the CAD lab. So we were in the CAD lab working on this and trying to learn everything from scratch, but we figured it out. As you can see, this is our first prototype. The yellow device is a linear multi-axis translation stage, which allows us to move the encoder wherever we want. So that accounts for the sensitivity of the encoder. So here are a couple of views. The problem with this, as you can see from the side view, is that the rail is raised up to meet the encoder, and that affects the integrity of the data that we collect. So Dr. Leonessa kind of told us to start from scratch, and we did. And we finally designed this prototype on which our new assembly will be based. It incorporates 2 linear translation stages like this, connected to an L bracket, and that accounts for the Y motion and the X motion along that axis. And this side view, you can see the rail is just right there with the encoder, so we don't have to bring it up or anything. And we've actually just ordered the parts, and we're waiting to reassemble. And last week, Garrett and I presented at the undergrad symposium. It was really interesting to see all the different research, everything that entails in research in engineering and the sciences. So that's me right there. Let's see. This is the engagement tab where I kind of bring everything together. It's just a lot of words. You don't have to look at it. Basically, oh, you know what? I missed something. I'm gonna go back here. This is important too. So this is future directions. We are currently using a large primary coil, and we want to be able to scale this down to a microcoil, and you can see how tiny that is. That's a penny right there, and that's what we want to implant inside the throat and control the stimulation with an external device, perhaps from an iPhone. So we'll be using that, and then we want to utilize skeletal muscle from a mouse, hopefully this summer, to replace the shape memory alloy. Then we can more accurately mimic the behavior of human throat muscles. And finally, we would like to create a life-size bust of the human throat so we can account for the actual environment in which we want to implant our stimulation system. Oh, fun fact, we submitted an abstract to the Biomedical Engineering Society conference, which will be in September, and we find out if we're accepted in June, so hopefully we get to go there. It's in Seattle, so it's exciting. Okay, back to this. We're gonna have to look at it. Basically, this e-portfolio was an obligation. I had to complete one for Pioneering, and it was really intimidating at first because Ms. Swavey sent us this huge how-to PDF on, tutorials, how to get started. I didn't even look at it. I didn't want to deal with it. But after a while, I kind of figured everything out myself, which is really the best way to learn. And this portfolio is not as flashy as any of the other ones, but it really got the job done. I think that it allowed me to internalize everything and reflect on how much I've progressed throughout this semester. And my audience is primarily professionals and students. For professionals, I'm on the pre-med track, so hopefully med schools like to see that I can not only document what I've been doing, but also be able to contextualize it and really apply it to the real world. And for students, I want to encourage them to not be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. I'm a bio major, but I'm in an engineering lab, and even though it's been a hard learning process, it's very fulfilling, and I think this e-portfolio really was conducive to my learning. Thank you. If you have any questions, let me know.